All right. Well, welcome to everyone. Welcome to the second of 6 career roadmap sessions. Tonight, our topic is career distinction, your personal brand, and it's a pleasure to have Denise Hempe with us to provide a great overview of the topic. Denise, of course, is an alum, currently VP of Talent Management at FM Global. Her LinkedIn gives you a great peek at what her career journey has been and how she has grown her personal brand. So before I pass it over to Denise, I have a couple of administrative tips for us for the next 30 minutes. So one, everyone is on mute. This does prevent echoes and background noise. Participants should be able to see Denise and I, as well as the presentation, but you cannot see each other. Denise will share insights over the next 20 minutes and then take questions. All questions will go in the chat box, and please select all participants as you're asking so we all can see the questions. And this session is being recorded so that we can place it in our Career Roadmap library, and that is on the Alumni Career Services website. So without further ado, we'll get going, and Denise, I'll hand the baton over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. I am thrilled to be here this evening. I love giving back to the university, and how my name came up for this. We talk about branding, and part of branding is networking. And an individual that I worked with quite some time ago at a local company, and I worked with him for probably about 11 or 12 years, was talking to Karen and said, I know the person who you could call. And then my name got floated around, and it was a former sorority sister who also said, hey, I know her. And that's part of my personal branding, right, is the networking. So I'm really happy and honored to be asked to present on this topic today. And actually putting the presentation together made me think about my personal brand, how it's evolved, and some things that I need to get back on the horse and start doing again, that I've fallen off of it. So it doesn't matter what level you are in your career, this is something you always have to be cultivating. So just a little bit about me. I'm currently the VP of Talent Management at FM Global, commercial property insurance company. It is headquartered out of Johnston, Rhode Island, and it has operations throughout the world and just under about 6,000 employees. So as you can imagine, very interesting times, all of us working from home. I graduated from URI with a BA in English, and I came to URI and never left, and I actually live about 7 minutes away from the university. I fell in love with the area and live here with my husband and my 2 kids, one of which who's moving to California on Friday to start his career. He just graduated Northeastern University. So I'm happy to share my advice with you because, of course, my child is not interested in mom's advice. It doesn't matter that I do this for a living. So I'm happy to impart what I can for all of you. So with that said, I'll kind of jump right in. And as we talk about your personal branding, I have a number of brands up on the screen, and I want you to just give some thought about those brands. And some of the brands may evoke an immediate recognition. Others maybe not so much. Others will evoke maybe some disdain right now, where a year ago maybe they would have evoked some pleasant thoughts around that. And that all has to do with their branding. And it's not just about the product that they sell. It's about what is the value that they bring to the consumer, or what they perceive their value to be, and market that to the consumer. But it's also what they do, and more these days, it's how they do it. So if you think of a company like, Tom's Shoes, for every pair that is bought, they donate a pair, as an example. Dove is celebrating real women. Dunkin' Donuts, the world runs on Dunkin', right? And people can't seem to, particularly in Rhode Island, can't seem to do without their Dunkin'.
And Denise, if I can interrupt you for 1 second, can
sure.
you move, on my screen, I can't see that slide.
Okay, it's showing up on mine.
Okay, very good. That might just be my screen. So continue.
Okay, it just, if other folks can't see it, they should make sure they let us know that in the chat.
Yes.
Oh, someone else says, Gina,
Yes.
she's not seeing it either. So I'm not quite sure why that's happening because I see it on my end. I can try and reload the file if you give me a second.
Okay. We have a couple of people just joining us, so we are reloading the presentation, so we'll just be a few seconds.
Do you see a page with logos on it?
No, actually, the first page never left my screen.
Because I just reloaded it, so I don't know if we can switch to you you sharing the presentation because for some reason it doesn't appear to be working on my end. Sorry about that, everyone.
That's all right. Let's see. So, folks, are you able to see my screen? I'm actually going to go to slideshow. All right, very good. All right, I think we're good, Denise.
Okay, thank you, and sorry about that, everyone. So as I was mentioning, you look at some of these logos and they evoke different reactions in you. And as I mentioned, more and more, it's not just, you know, what someone does or why they do it. It's also about how they do it. Are they sustainable? Are there issues with child labor in a manufacturing facility, for example? And so a lot of times these brands really have to come up with not just a tagline, but kind of like, what is their story? If you think of a company like Burt's Bees, you know, I went out to some of the websites, what do they say? So Burt's whole persona is around what you put on your body should be made from the best that nature has to offer, true to nature. A company like Warby Parker wants to offer designer eyewear at what they call it, not just a good price, but a revolutionary price, while leading the way for socially conscious businesses. Airbnb says without the customer, there is no brand. They need customers on both ends, people that want to rent as well as individuals who want to you know, take advantage of those rentals. And then you look at companies that are experiencing some troubles right now, like a Boeing and like an Uber. Chipotle, it depends on who you are. I haven't eaten there since they had their food, you know, quality issues, and other people are like, yep, they're back on the wagon. So their brand may be a little tenuous at this point. And then I think about my own company and what our brand is all about. We are very different in that we do not hire actuaries. An insurance company without actuaries, people say, yes, we do it through partnership with our clients and through engineering, and our engineers going on site to our customers. So you see brands every day in your life. Well, what you need to do is be thinking about what is your own brand. And Karen, you can go to the next slide. And so we're going to think about a couple of questions. So what is a professional brand? We're going to talk about, the other question is, what's your brand? And then lastly, the last question that we'll be talking about is, how does professionalism or lack of it affect your brand? And so these are all things to be considered. If you move to the next slide, Karen.
Good.
Yes, thank you. So professional brand is not just one thing. It's not a tagline. It's not just a product. It is essentially a living, breathing document, and it's an important part of their company. And first and foremost, a brand really does have to be authentic. The worst thing that happens is when a company says something like, we operate in a very sustainable fashion, and then out it comes that they have some sort of a factory that's dumping chemicals into a river somewhere, or that they have child labor, and that's not very authentic, because what they do and how they do it doesn't match kind of who they are and who they say they are. So first and foremost, it's authentic. It's about a unique selling proposition. So what makes Nike a better company than a Reebok? Why should you choose one over the other? And when you're in the workplace, essentially you're trying to say to a company, I want you to pick me over another candidate, let's say. And so as a result of that, you do need to, brands, just like brands do, it's about targeting your message and always ensuring that you are evolving, just like a brand out in the marketplace has to evolve. We think of companies, and many of you on the phone are probably too young to remember, but companies like a Kodak, for example, like they used to make film and cameras, and they were everywhere, and then they were nowhere. So companies that get left behind because they're not evolving. And it has to be fully integrated. All these things need to work together. And most of all, it does need to be consistent. The worst thing is when a brand or a company doesn't really know what it wants to be, and it keeps sort of flipping around and trying to figure out, where they want to land. And in the marketplace, that can look a little disorganized. And so if you think about yourself as your own company, and think about what is the brand that you want your company to portray, that's really what we're here to talk about. So Karen, if you want to go to the next slide. So creating a brand involves about 5 different processes. It's defining your brand, it's creating it, communicating it, evaluating it, and cultivating it. And that is sort of one of those kind of cycles. Not that you're going to redefine it or recreate it every year, but you may, on occasion, as you progress through your career or different life stages, you may be revisiting what you want your brand to be as you gain experience. Next slide.
Okay.
So in terms of defining your brand, what are the components of your brand? Your brand is not simply a tagline or a professional statement. It is a number of things that really make you who you are. It's your skills, it's what you value, it's what you believe in, it's what your vision is for either yourself and or the work that you do. What are your goals? And what's the knowledge that you bring to the table? So there's a number of different components to consider. Next slide.
All set.
And so as you are thinking about this, and this can be a difficult exercise, believe it or not, and maybe for those that attended the first session a couple of weeks ago, maybe you've gotten a little further in this than others, but you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. What adjectives would you use to describe yourself? And it's always helpful to ask people to give you a couple of adjectives to describe you, and ask them to be honest. If you are a parent or you are a child, call your child or call your parents, because they will be brutally honest with you, and they will give you some adjectives, some of which you may not like. But think about, what is it that you're known for? And at the end, what you're trying to figure out is what separates you from the pack. So what's your unique selling proposition? And so doing a little bit of that self-reflection can help you in terms of putting your kind of brand together and knowing who you are and what you stand for. Next slide.
Okay.
So in terms of creating your professional brand, you do this a number of different ways. Certainly, if you are a new graduate, you've done it through your academics. You may have had an opportunity to do internships or co-ops. If you are mid-career or late in your career, or even coming out of university, you likely have done some level of volunteerism. All of those things say something about you and can be part of your brand should you choose to utilize those things. Of course, any professional work experience is part of your brand. And if, depending on what your course of study was or the work that you're involved in, any research that you may have done or self-development that you've done on your own can be utilized as a way to create your professional brand and talk about who you are, what you do, what you stand for. Next slide.
Okay.
So once you've gone through, and I realize we're going through this so quickly, and I know Karen will make some of these slides available. But once you have kind of created your brand and thought about all those different things, you need to put it together and to be in a position to be communicating it out to the world, out to the professional world. And so one way of doing that is you definitely want to be visible. So you are visible through the work experience you do, consultants that you interact with, people in other companies, professional associations that you belong to. If you are on social media, if you're on LinkedIn or you are on a Twitter page for your company, not your own personal Twitter, because we'll talk about that. If you participate in any blogs or if there are publications that you can contribute to, it's so much easier these days to be able to be visible in a lot of different ways. And so think about those ways, but think about them from the professional sense and be careful about what it is you want to share. Because really your personal brand is a blend of who you are as a person and who you are professionally. So those two things do come together, and sometimes those lines can get blurred. So you do want to be cognizant of how you appear when you are live and in person, whether it be in face-to-face with somebody, on a video call, or some other mechanism on an audio call. You want to behave the same way that you would behave if you were in person with somebody. So that all comes down to your physical presence, what you're wearing, how you present yourself. Do you show up on time? Are you running through the door 5 minutes late? That's all part of your brand. And I think this might be some slide where there's a couple of watch outs to be cognizant of. So if you want to hit advanced, Karen, I think, we've talked about the meeting etiquette. And be prepared when you're introducing yourself to have, in some sense, a very short, what's your tagline or what's your professional statement? How do you want to introduce yourself in terms of, who you are, what's the value you bring, and what you are about, so that you can immediately distinguish yourself. And that takes a little bit of practice so that you're not caught off guard. And you do want to be careful about the role of social media. The lines have become very blurred these days, for sure. And employers will, even though they shouldn't be doing it, they do. I can tell you hiring managers do it, even though HR professionals like myself say don't, but they will try to see what's publicly available on an individual. So depending on how you have settings on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook, just keep in mind what you are doing in your personal life may become visible. So you definitely want to do a Google search on yourself, see what pops up. And it can be kind of interesting. Things that you never thought were there could be there, and you may have had nothing to do with them. So that's definitely something I would recommend doing, because other people may Google you just as easily. So those are a couple of watch outs. Next slide. So once you've established your brand, you do want to periodically go back and evaluate your brand and do your own self-assessment. Maybe you're 5 years into your career. Maybe the things that were important to you before, or that distinguished you before, perhaps you're now known for some other things because you've gained experience, you've gained some more exposure. And you can also ask other professionals and say, hey, ask them about the adjectives. And you can be honest with people. Hey, I'm looking and I'm trying to refresh my brand. And I'd be curious, how do you see me? What are some adjectives that you might use to describe me? Here's what I feel like I'm bringing to the table, or what I desire to bring to the table. Does that come across? It's really important to understand how others see you. Because as one of the watch-outs, Karen, if you want to advance, one of the other watch-outs is whether we like it or not, perception equals reality. And so you do periodically want to check in. And if you hear, something about you that doesn't seem as positive, you might want to investigate why that is, so that you can take steps to guard your professional reputation. Because at the end, that's what a lot of this will come down to, is how you are thought of, not just in the company you work, but in the professional association circles that, that you are affiliated with. And over time, as your network grows, you want to have other people out there being your cheerleader. Just like my former coworker said to Karen, hey, I know someone. I worked with Denise at another company. You should give her a call. So that's what you want to strive for. Next slide. Mm-hmm. You also want to cultivate this. So it is not set it and forget it. I've done it, and now I don't have to worry about it again. And this was a nice reminder, even going through this for myself, because it's been a while since I really took a look at and questioned my own brand and where is it today? Where do I want it to be? You never really get there. You are growing and evolving as both a person and a professional, and that is going to change your brand over time. So you want to seek out those opportunities to be heard, to let others see what's important to you. So in LinkedIn, you can, for example, follow certain individuals. And in your profile, it will show people who is it or what is it, what company are you following? Are you following a thought leader in your field, for example? Are you commenting on posts? Are you sharing posts? Are you out there? Are you active? It does take time, but frankly, if we all spent as much time on LinkedIn as we did on Facebook or Instagram or any other social media platform, we probably all would have pretty good brands. So it is work. Sometimes it can feel like work, but the return on that can be really impressive. And it's amazing how you can stay in touch with people that might have helped you out when you were first starting out. I sent a note to someone who, without their help, I would have never gotten my first job, and who knows where I would be today, right? So he posted something, and I sent him a note back and said, hey, I just wanted to thank you again. And we're going back on now, I'm embarrassed to say, probably almost 30 years ago. And before social media, you wouldn't have had that opportunity. So you want to take advantage of those opportunities. And you do want to adjust your brand, not to say you're changing your brand, but what you might focus on when you're applying for a job at X company versus applying for a job at Y company. It is okay to do that. And people always sort of question, why should I adjust my resume, or why should I adjust my professional statement when I'm applying for a job? Shouldn't it be what it is? And yes and no. You will have to highlight certain aspects of your career or your experience or your research, dependent upon the job that you are applying to. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not dishonest as long as you're still being truthful. It just may be where you need to place your emphasis so that you can stand out from the pack. Next slide. Yes, oh, I forgot about this. So you do want to be cognizant of when you are in social situations or you've interviewed for a role. Following up is huge, even if it's to say, thank you, I'm not interested. I recently, just this week, had a candidate for a role who literally ghosted us. I said, I can't believe this. I think we've been ghosted. Just stopped responding. And okay, but geez, how unprofessional that was. And I thought, boy, if that person ever came back our way, I wouldn't consider them because it was very unprofessional. I guess it's one thing in a relationship, you know, in your social life, which is still not good, but definitely professionally it's not. So follow-up is important. And I love this quote, you must be respectful of the collective memory of your professional community. If you are a positive person, you have a good reputation, that is going to get around. Similarly, if you end up with a bad reputation, that gets around too. And in some professions, it's a very small circle, and also depending on where you're working, it can be a small circle. Rhode Island, for me, Rhode Island is like a double whammy. I'm in HR, very small HR community in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island itself is a very small state. So it's something I have to be very, very cognizant of. But even in larger states, again, with social media and the way that people connect, it is amazing how your name can get around. So that's just a watch out. Next slide. These are the key elements in which your brand becomes evident. And I won't review all of them. And I'm making some assumptions that everyone knows what LinkedIn is, for example. But one tip I saw as I was doing some research for this was related to professional photo. They were saying don't use different photos on different social media platforms for business. Use the same photo because it creates kind of a visual brand recognition. Someone goes, oh, I've seen that picture before. I've seen that person before. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Business cards, you know, a lot of people don't carry them anymore. A lot of people are trading contact information directly on their phones. So that may depend on where you might be working as to whether or not you have that, but that is also a way that you're presenting yourself. And even if you're not working, creating a business card gives you an opportunity to share a little bit about your brand. The elevator pitch is a really good one, as I mentioned, whether it be on your resume as your professional statement or as you're introducing yourself. You want to think about what is your elevator pitch. Next slide. Networking. I've talked a little bit about this. This is really where the hard work is in terms of connecting with people and maintaining those connections. And it really is about developing mutually valuable relationships. It really doesn't work if it's only one-sided. If you are only calling somebody when you need something, pretty soon they're going to stop answering the phone. You want to be sure that even if you are asking for something, that you make an offer. And it may be, look, I'm not working right now, but you know, when I do find a job, I'd be really happy to connect with you. And I would love to you know, be someone that you could recommend as an informational interviewer because you've done that for me. So even if you don't have something at that minute to offer, you can put some type of an offer out there. You want to make sure that you are memorable. And again, it's about the follow-up. If someone gives you a lead on something, send them a quick note, say, hey, thanks for recommending that individual. I just thought I would let you know we hired her full-time. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without your help. That's a true example of a great resource that came my way that was all through networking. It's not hard to do, but you just need to be careful. It's not about the quantity of people you're connected with. It's about the quality of those connections. And you do have to go back and water the flower, if you will. If you haven't talked with someone in a couple of months, you can drop them a quick note. They may not respond, but they know that you reached out to them. So this is where there is a lot of hard work that needs to be done. Next slide.
And we are, folks, I know we are at 7:30. We're at the bottom of the hour, if you will. For those of you that can stay on for a few more minutes, that would be terrific. And we do understand if some have to drop.
I won't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but if you are a professional, you need to have a LinkedIn profile, and it needs to be a complete profile. And LinkedIn does a great job of walking you through all of the different elements. As I mentioned, you can join groups, you can follow certain people. They really come a long, long way from its origins. But it gives you a chance to showcase your unique selling proposition. What makes you special? Why should someone hire you? It gives you a chance to put out there a professional statement. And if you're not sure, just start poking around and looking at how other people are marketing themselves and what their statements are. So having a picture is a must. Have it be professional. I looked up someone the other day just out of curiosity, someone I went to URI with, and I was horrified. It was a picture of 3 guys in hockey jerseys holding red cups, and I was just like, oh no, what are you thinking? First of all, I don't know who the person is because there's 3 people in that picture. I mean, I could recognize him. And the LinkedIn profile was so sparse, and I thought, oh, not good. Maybe they're happy with where they are, but even if they don't intend on leaving their job, their LinkedIn profile says something about them. So you do want to have a complete profile, and you do want to ensure that it's updated. Next slide, Karen. We've talked about that. So really, in summary, and I feel like at warp speed, we've gone through what those 5 steps are to creating your professional brand. As I mentioned, Karen will make all or some of these slides available to you, I believe. And with that, I would really be happy to answer any questions that any individuals have. And, you know, certainly if, you know, Karen, if folks are, you know, thinking about a question, I know that we received a couple in advance that I can certainly talk about if you like.
Yes. Yes, and to all, this presentation, the slides plus the recording will be on our website in the Career Roadmap Series library. So yes, folks, any questions I would ask that you place in the chat box and to all participants. And Denise, we did have a couple of questions before the session, and one was from an early career individual who said, okay, I've been through academics and only had 1 internship. Do you think I can create a good personal brand?
Absolutely. I think really and if you think about all these different facets we talked about, it's not just the internship, it's the academics, it's the volunteerism that you have done. And certainly for an early career professional, those certainly can be part of your LinkedIn profile. They're part of who you are. And I think it's about trying to leverage those experiences to showcase the skills, knowledge, and experience that you can bring to the table for the right employer. So it is possible to build that brand, and hopefully these steps help you to understand, you know, I guess understand how you can go about building that and the different aspects to leverage. But I think even if you're early career, you can do it. Everyone had to start somewhere, and I think kids graduating now more than ever have had a lot of opportunity during their university career to gain some knowledge and valuable skills that are valuable for an employer.
Terrific. Another question, if you are looking to pivot your career into a different field but do not have any work experience in that field, how do you make it part of your personal brand to be able to pursue that field?
So that's a great question, and I actually was advising someone on this through networking. And, you know, what I said to that person was when I looked at her resume, so actually talking to someone who maybe is more objective could help, but you can have someone maybe look through your experience to see, you know, what are some of the key skills and experiences that you have in your background, and where do you want to pivot? Because you can pull those things out, and you can even be honest about it. Say, you know, while I may not have direct experience in this particular field, I have had experience with X, Y, or Z, or I have these skills that can transfer. And then think about how those skills can transfer. And one way to do that is to perhaps find someone in that field and do just an informational interview with them and say, hey, I'm looking to change careers, or I'm looking to change fields. Would you be willing to talk to me about how I can leverage my experience to be considered a candidate in that field? And what else can I do to be able to market myself in that way? It's about taking the skills that you do have and having somebody look at them through a different lens. Sometimes you have to help them to do that, but that could be one way to go about doing that.
Terrific. I would agree with all points you're making there.
Yes, and feel free, Karen, to jump in.
Yeah. Let's see. So, yes, we did have a question, is a personal brand my pitch statement? But I think you did a great job through the presentation talking about that. I think the pitch statement is a tool to help you promote your brand.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions, folks?
And one thing I might mention too, there's a great YouTube video, or I'm trying to think of TED Talk actually, by a gentleman called Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, and he is like this marketing guru guy, and he talks about how you can be successful in branding. And I think a lot of this is from the commercial standpoint or the consumer goods standpoint. But he talks about kind of flipping the script on it. And a lot of marketing companies traditionally would start out with what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. And it's sort of, they call it the golden circle. And most people sort of start with the what, the how, and the why. And he says, really, to be successful, start with the why, talk about the how, then talk about what. And that could just be an interesting way to think about, you know, putting your brand together. He's a pretty compelling speaker to watch, and it's not a very long TED Talk, and it may inspire you a bit to think about your own brand in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm. I'll include that in our notes that we'll post in the library. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, folks, another call for questions. Well, I do realize that we're at about 7:40 now, and Denise, this was a terrific journey through personal branding. The slides are terrific and very easy to understand. So as folks, as this is placed in our library, I think folks are going to get a lot out of this. So I appreciate your time tonight, Denise. Thank you for all you put into this, and for all folks that joined us tonight, thank you. And I hope to see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Appreciate it.
All right. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.